Welcome to another beautiful day in Florida. Today we're going to be talking about a few different articles. The first one we're going to start off with is about the smaller banks failing because a billionaire investor has just recently mentioned that he expects one smaller bank to fail every week. That is just unbelievable. And let me tell you what he's saying and why this could be failing. So Barry Sterlet is the CEO of Starwood Capital Group. They are a real estate giant and they have $115 billion under real estate management. So he is worried about the over 4,000 community banks and regional banks within the US. Now, he has a legit concern. The main concern that he's talking about is because of all the real estate debt that they have taken on. Now, what I mean by that is they have lent money to investors, and now these investors are suffering with much higher vacancy rates. They also locked up their money with low interest rates, but right now we're in a high interest rate environment. And let's not forget everyone's favorite inflation, which is still not under control. It was supposed to be under control by now. However, the federal government is not getting it right. They're basically saying higher rates for longer. And by the way, my name is Maciek Zaremba. I'm a real estate agent. I'm also a real estate investor. And I'm out of Sarasota, Florida. If you're wondering where the heck I am right now, I'm at University Park Place. I have never been here, and it seems like I'm trekking through the random little place right behind the tennis courts. There is a little bit of a path here, so I'll just keep following it. Now, I have to say that he is more pessimistic than I am about what's happening in the economy. He's actually saying that because of all of these problems that are current and active right now, that he's expecting to see bank failures, not in the numbers of once per month, but he's expecting to see them daily or at the very minimum weekly. Now, I don't even think we're going to be close to that by any means. However, I'm pretty sure we're going to have at least a couple banks start going through major turmoil, and then they're going to start asking for some bailouts. Because what does our government like to do? Our federal government hates to see bankers lose money. They hate to see the uncertainty in the economy that happens, and then they just give them money at a very, very low interest rate so that they can survive and continue lending that money and making more money when they made some bad loans from the past. And you know, I've talked about this in some other videos, but in case you don't know, the way it works is like this. Small regional banks are the ones that usually loan to some commercial projects. And while they're lending to these commercial projects, they base the repayment terms, the interest rate, everything based on back then. And they lock it up, you know, for a good 5 years, sometimes 10 years with a fixed interest rate. Well, when they lent all their money out back just 3 years ago at 3%, 4%, guess what happened? They locked up the potential of how much money they can make. And back then, the vacancy rates were close to zero, so they were looking real good and pretty on everything they were investing in. But now, vacancy rates have skyrocketed. Not only that, but multifamily has gone through lower prices for multifamily. They started lowering the prices. And now when those loans are gonna come due, so that's gonna be in about, 2 to 3 years, because the shortest time frames they lend is right around 5 years. So when those come due, they're gonna have to actually refinance out. Usually they stick with the same bank. They do an appraisal, and they have to make sure that not only that the appraisal is met, but also that their income can cover the payments and then some. Well, when all the rent payments go down, when their fees for the 3-bedroom, 2-bath goes down, the total amount of money that they're bringing in is going down. But at the same time, they're going from a 3% or a 4% or a 5% rate to 8 or 8.5 or 9. So do you think they're going to be able to make that payment? No, they're not even going to qualify to make that payment. So the real estate investors who bought these properties are going to be met with a choice. Either they're going to sell the property and liquidate it, And sometimes they can't even do that. Or they're going to bring in additional investors and dilute their share of the property, but they're not going to want to do that, but some of them will actually do that. Or they could just let the bank take it. Now, if they let the bank take it, that means all payments have stopped because the bank is not in the business of running commercial property management. So they're going to go and either try to offload it and foreclose on it or something, maybe a deed in lieu of foreclosure, and they're going to just try to dump it and get rid of it, get some of their investment back, and then the investor loses everything and the bank loses some, and the next buyer picks it up at a pretty decent discount. Okay, so despite all of this pessimism about what he's expecting to happen, so far we've only had one regional bank fail, which was Republic First Bank. They were in Philadelphia, New York, and New Jersey. And what contributed to their failing is exactly what we're talking about, was bad real estate holdings. Well, not their holdings, just the bad real estate lending practices that they did. And before we move on to our next article, I just want to say one thing, that this guy has been predicting doomsday for over 2 years at this point. It's funny because even though it hasn't happened yet, I am as surprised as he is. Because right around 2 years ago, in May, actually it was exactly 2 years ago, May of 2022, I said, uh-oh, I feel it. I had this feeling that brought me back to June 2005. That feeling was, uh-oh, people are doing some stupid things. Those investments and these purchases that people are doing are not looking good, and they're going to regret it, and things are going to get bad. I had no idea how bad it was going to get. It got absolutely horrible. I mean, even I lost properties in that time frame. Everyone stopped paying their mortgages, and I just couldn't afford it, and I eventually lost everything that I had, but I stayed in the business and I built it back. So if that happens to you this time around, I highly recommend you stay in the business and build it all back, because then you'll have a lot more fortitude second time around. And one last thing I'll say is that, you know, there is something that can completely change his opinion and my opinion as well, and that would be lowering the interest rates, allowing the people who borrowed the funds at the low rates, whose loans are about to come due, and allowing them to refinance when their loan is coming due and get a much better interest rate than they would get right now, which would be, you know, about 8%, 9%. Now our next article goes into, it's actually written by Market Watch, and it goes into the real estate prices rising. So as I mentioned, you know, not too long ago in a few videos, is that somehow year over year, the median home price in the US and in a lot of states has gone up about 4%, which I find mind-boggling because interest rates have gone up about 2% in that last year, maybe 1.5 or so. So it's kind of mind-boggling of how it can happen that the demand is still high at the same time as inventory keeps rising. And this article is going into the realities of some of the markets where the prices are falling. They mention 15, and I'm going to tell you some of the areas that are actually experiencing some price drops. I haven't even looked at this list yet, but I'm willing to bet you right now that some of them are going to be in Florida. I guarantee it. So this is really interesting. First of all, in 93% of all the large markets, prices increased in the last year. That is just crazy if you ask me. And I say that once again because of the interest rates. And why is demand still going up? I'm not quite sure. But 7% of the markets, the prices went down. And let's just start right here. First of all, we had Elmira, New York. Second one was San Antonio, Texas. Next one is Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Florida. That's just an hour south of where I am, maybe like an hour 15. Next one was Panama City, Florida. So that's in the Panhandle. Then Boulder, Colorado. Salem, Oregon. Then South Bend, Michigan. And then Logan, Utah, Idaho. Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Next one, I'm not sure how to pronounce, Peoria, Illinois. And there's a few more, but then I just want to get to our Florida one since this is Florida Real Estate TV. The second last one is Crestview, Fort Walton Beach, and Destin, Florida, which is up north in the Panhandle again. Now later in the article they're mentioning how Florida and Texas has other metros which are starting to show signs of prices falling. And they, of course, account it to exactly what I've been saying this whole time was our inventory. You see, I've been tracking our real estate statistics for quite a while, especially in my local market, which is Sarasota, Bradenton, Sarasota, Manatee County. And we have had some drastically sharp increases in inventory, but we haven't had the prices fall yet, because obviously the more supply you have, the lower the prices are going to go. But first, supply needs to get up there before prices get adjusted. And real estate takes a long time for prices to adjust. It's not a commodity like copper or milk or corn. You know, it hits the market, now you have to just lower the price. Unfortunately, it takes people to make decisions, not large corporations. And the people just aren't ready yet, especially the second homeowners who, you know, have a luxury home or just a second home in Florida, even if it's a small home. And they don't have to sell, but they just kind of might want to, because, you know, let's just say their insurance went up by 30% and it's no longer as attractive as it used to be. You know, not long ago, I was talking to one of my past clients, Tommy, and he was considering going through the process because of insurance having gone up so much. And, you know, at the end of the day, the Florida dream is a dream for so many people, and he was able to get to that with his wife, and they didn't want to sell, so we found a way for them to keep it. And I'm so glad he kept it, because this was really his dream for many years. This was his and his wife's dream to come to Florida and stay here for 3, 4, 5 months. In his case, I think it's 5 or 6 months, every single year, and visit with his parents who live here. And then also, you know, his brothers also come and visit to this area. So that is a dream that not many people want to give up on. And if you need to sell, if you're in this position where you need to sell, you have to sell, well, unfortunately, that dream of yours may be over. But that does not mean that you're going to be able to get out of it quickly. So don't be fooled. Our current inventory is rising, and any listing that hits the market might sit for a while. The good news is, in our local area at least, the days on market is only about 60. But I remember way back when, in the Great Recession, the days on market, you know, the conversation with sellers wasn't how long is it going to take to sell my house if we get it priced right, because some homes never sold. It just took so long, and the days on market was in the hundreds. So, you know, we're not in a position like that. We're not even close to it. So it could get a lot worse before it gets better. And I'm not sure if it's ever going to get as bad as it used to be. I don't think it will, unless our interest rates go to double digits. If we go to 10% or more, then we're in for a nasty surprise. And our last article is about Blackstone again, because this article headline says, "Inside Blackstone's real estate buying spree as valuations plummet." And first of all, valuations are not plummeting, so I don't know where they got that. Second of all, they're not buying houses. It sounds like they are, doesn't it? Inside Blackstone's real estate buying spree? Well, that does not mean they're actually buying houses. They are investing into other things, and this is pretty interesting because they know they're like one step ahead of the game usually, right? So their purchasing was examined and their spending was examined by a company. And here's what they found. It's super interesting. First of all, the CEO of Blackstone, John Gray, he said that real estate values are bottoming. And then he said that the firm is ready to deploy capital. Well, they did deploy some capital, but listen to this. They have said that they have spent over $10 billion in real estate investments. First of all, they've been spending on distressed property sales. This is the best way to deploy money. If I was Blackstone and I had $10 billion to manage for people, I would only buy distressed properties, because you end up picking them up at about 30% cheaper than fair market value. Then you get to improve them a little bit and build in some sweat equity. But they didn't buy that. What they did is they purchased loans from the FDIC after the failure of Signature Bank. So it sounds to me like they put money into the notes, you know, so being a note buyer is a really good investment. And if there's a distressed bank that's going to default, then they have to sell off their assets, and some of their assets are the portfolios of notes that they hold. If you don't know anything about that, just Google it. and research a little bit. It's an interesting business model, but you kind of need a lot of money to get into that. And then another thing is data centers. They also invested into real estate data centers because that's obviously part of our future, is to have a lot more data centers that we do right now. Another thing that they invested in has been real estate adjacent businesses, so things that work really well with real estate. For example, engineering and infrastructure lending. So when they were saying that the prices have bottomed, they were mostly referring to the commercial sector, because I'm not sure if you know, but Blackstone is the largest commercial real estate owner in the world. And even though we are currently having a lot of uncertain news regarding the economy and inflation in particular, they just released a video last month in April, and in this video the CEO of Blackstone once again showed a lot of optimism for the industry. So I think that, you know, they have a lot of researchers that we don't have. Obviously we don't have access to this, and maybe they're just saying something to keep their portfolio nice and strong, or maybe they know something we don't know. What do you think?